When you grow, it causes other people to have to react to your growth. Some people are going to go, wow, look at her. She's growing. I want that too.
Sure.
How did she do that? Let me go. I would like that. And some people are going to go, you're making me uncomfortable because you're growing. And this can be your partner, your parents, your sister,
siblings.
Right.
Yep.
Like even your best friend.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Amira, and joining us on PivotMe. We are so excited to connect with you today.
I'm excited to be here, April. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we just read your bio, but I would love for you to tell us how you got into this type of work.
Absolutely. So fundamentally, it was me wanting to help myself, right? I had big goals. I had big dreams. I wanted more for myself. I didn't think I could have more, but I wanted more, right? Like I was in that big desire. How do I make it happen? What's the path? I see that people are doing extraordinary things with their lives. What's wrong with me? Okay, that was the story in my head, to be honest. It wasn't necessarily a functional story or a healthy story,
Sure.
but it was the story that was in my head. It was like, if I'm so smart and I'll flip my hair back, right? Like I did well in school. I worked hard on that, right? If I'm dotting my I's and crossing my T's and putting in the effort and the hard work and the hours, and I'm a good person and I have a good service, why am I not getting ahead? Why is this feeling like a freaking grind, even though I have a good attitude, right? I'll wake up every day with a good attitude, but at the end of the day, you're like, why am I not freaking ahead?
Yeah.
And so fundamentally, I really wanted to help myself. I wanted to figure out where success came from and how to create it, and how to create it like clockwork and with a methodology and not guessing. I don't know if you've ever experienced, but the throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks strategy for growing my business.
Yeah.
Right. And that was not, I could explain how that's part of the process, but it's not a long-term strategy, and it's not going to get you to quantum leaping your business and really making an income breakthrough. So fundamentally, I got into it because I wanted to figure it out for myself.
Yeah. I love this concept of, hey, I did all the right things, because I think that there's a lot of speakers that talk to people that are like, all right, we have to talk about worthiness, and we have to talk about like, you have to show up and you have to stay disciplined. And I love this concept of, hey, I thought I was doing the right things. I did well in school. I showed up, I hustled, I had the right attitude. Why is it not clicking? And I love that you're speaking to this audience, because I think this really resonates for the pivoters listening, is like, hey, but I did the right things. I'm doing the right things. What's the key that needs to unlock the door? So before we talk about how you change and what you did right, what is it that you were doing wrong? Or what is it that people who are in that position doing wrong? What are they missing?
Yeah, really good question. So, we could get into a lot of specificity here, because there's nuance to it and discernment to it, and the power is in the details of it. But fundamentally, it was that I was not seeing my place in the universe correctly. So what do I mean by that? My beliefs about who I was, my identity, my self-image were inaccurate. And additionally, my beliefs about how I fit into the way the universe worked and interactions with other people was inaccurate. I had inaccurate beliefs. And this is very hard to see for yourself when you're holding those beliefs, because beliefs are what allow us to survive based on our own conditioning, upbringing, experience, all of that. So they feel real and true. So it's like seeing the green of the forest when you're in it, and someone saying, no, that's not green, that's brown. And you're like, no, but I see green, right? Like you can't see beyond your beliefs. So you're really quite stuck, and it can get circular. So fundamentally, you have to change how you see yourself in order to really show up differently and have a different perspective on the world. So you could say fundamentally it's about perspective.
Yeah. So when was the moment that you realized that you were seeing yourself wrong or your place in the universe?
My pivot moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So my pivot moment was, and this was 7 years ago, roughly, if I'm counting correctly off the top of my head. There was this moment I had. So a little bit of a backstory. I started another business many years ago, grew that successfully to a place where I was in my small little mind body community in the Bay Area, was doing pretty well, and people were coming to me asking me what I was doing, right? And I had grown that business and done a lot of the research on how to grow businesses and was loving teaching people and all of that. And then I had this choice when I moved across the country, whether I would start that business again or do something different. And long story short, lots of, deep heart and soul, thinking, digging in, I decided I was going to start a different business based on what I loved doing when people were asking me about how to grow a business. And I just really loved that. So let's take that leap of faith. Let's go for it. That first year in business, I made 30K. I felt pretty good. It was probably 6-9 months, not a full year, but I was like, oh, I got something.
I got something. Yeah.
Right? And then my second year in business, I tripled. I got to 90K. I didn't make that mythical 6-figure mark, but I felt, solid about tripling.
Sure.
And then the next year in business, I got to 138. So another 50K. And so I was feeling fairly successful about growing the business as a solo entrepreneur. Different businesses have different revenue levels, but as a solo entrepreneur, service provider, that was decent for the first couple of years in business. But I didn't know, I was an unconscious competent. I didn't know what I did to go from 30 to 90 or 90 to 138. Like I just had no idea. It was what I spoke about earlier. I was just doing all the things. There was, I would try this strategy, then I would try that strategy, then I would try this, right? Like it was my fundamental meta strategy, April, was work harder.
Would just do everything. Yeah. It wasn't like optimization. It was just everything.
Everything full out, go hard, work harder. You can do it. Right. And there's truth to the work hard strategy. Like the flip side of that is the navel gazing, which is like, I'm just going to wish it to happen. And like, that does not work. I just want to make sure everyone here understands that does not work. There is a certain amount of effort that you have to put in.
Sure. Even though a lot of people talk about it, you don't just manifest it out of thin air. That's not how it works.
You don't. You can find better opportunities and act on better opportunities and make more money more quickly, but you still have to put the work in.
Sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So when I had gotten to that 138 level, that's what I'd made the year before. I was sitting on the floor of my office. I was leaning up against the couch, laptop on my lap. It was the end of the day. I probably had gotten up at like 5:30, 6:30, something like that. And it was now probably 6:30 at night. And my husband called upstairs and was like, hey, babe, dinner's ready. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I'll be right down. I just want to get one more thing done. Now, like famous freaking last words, right?
Right.
45 minutes later, he's like, honey, I'm starting. And I was like, oh my God, this is so unsustainable. Okay. This is not how I want to live my life. And I was grateful that he didn't guilt or shame me. He just went on. Right. But for me, I was like, this is not how successful people do life. This cannot be how successful people do life. Now I get we need to put the effort in, but this was not how it worked. And then I had this witness perspective and I took a look at myself and I laugh now telling this story, but I was in the clothes that I slept in. And because it was not a client facing day. So I hadn't taken a shower and I was like in the grimy dog hair covered sweats with the t-shirt that's kind of seen better days, not the cute little sexy thing. Right. Like I was in the like
the concert t-shirt you went to 20 years ago. Yeah.
Correct.
Totally get it.
Like way too comfortable. And I was like, this is not how Beyonce does it. Okay. And And then it got worse because I realized that I was like, I had such a tiger chasing me, and I was like so driven by fear of dropping the ball or not getting it done that I hadn't even brushed my teeth that day. Right. It was like, it was super pathetic. So when you mentioned the whole self-worth thing, all of that, the discipline, all of that's part of it. And I realized like I was not holding myself to a high standard of who I wanted to be. Like somehow I was going to be that woman in the future if I kept doing what I was doing. But that's not how you get to be that woman. Okay. You have to do different things to get to be that woman. So that was my big wake up moment where I was just like, you know what? There are not more hours in the day. Like my one strategy was work hard. I was already working the 12, 14-hour days. You can't double your income by doubling your work hours. It's not possible.
Ooh, say that again. You can't double your income.
You can't double your income by doubling your work hours. Ooh. Or for your go hard women, right? You can't 10 times your income by 10 times in your work hours. Okay. If you're making 100K and you want to make a million, you cannot 10 times your work hours. That's where I was. I was at 138. I wanted to make $1 million. That math equation does not work.
For sure.
In no universe. Okay. I understand how to work time, right? Like change your attitude, changes your experience of time, but there's still everyone on this 3D plane still has 24 hours in the day, you know? And so that year I really I studied success. I studied what it took, and I did not 10 times my income. I did not make that $1 million, but I went to 700K, which is, which
138 to 700K. You have to have changed your strategy to go from 138 to 700.
You bet your bottom dollar I did.
Oh, so wait, talk to us. I want to know more about this, but I love this phrase you said. I had a tiger chasing me. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think everyone well, I can't say everyone, but I would imagine most entrepreneurs understand what this means. They have big goals, big dreams. They have deadlines. They have, can I swear on this podcast?
You sure can.
Oh shit, I'm not going to make payroll. Oh shit, I don't have enough money this month. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, it's the 27th. What the frickety frick am I going to be doing? Right.
Yeah.
And that is, then you go into hyperdrive, all the stuff that you need to do. And there's a tiger chasing you. You're in fear and you're physically reacting to a psychodrama. Like there is a tiger chasing you. Yeah. And I was getting up every single day doing that. And in some ways, I'm not going to write this off as a strategy completely. In some ways, being urgency driven,
for sure,
you
get leverage.
You get leverage, right? You move past some of those sabotages, some of those places where you want to stop. And I've learned strategies for doing that. You know, you pick a date, you announce it, and then you figure out how to do whatever it is that you're doing, right?
Yep.
But you can have that urgency without the fear. And that's what I love to teach people how to do. It takes practice. It takes a different perspective. It takes learning the universal laws. I teach from a perspective of success laws. Like there are laws that govern success. And when you understand those, then you can govern yourself. And when you can govern yourself, you can make decisions that create a time urgency without feeling like there's a tiger chasing you.
Without the fear. I love this. So let me just recap to bring us up to speed for the pivoters listening. So there's this pivot moment. It's this combination of your husband calling you down for dinner, and then let me do one more thing. And I'm laughing as you say that because I'm thinking, how many times have I been in this exact situation? How many times have our listeners been in this exact situation where it's like, hold on, I just have this one more thing, or hold on, I'm about to leave the office, and then we don't leave the office, right? Because there's just one more thing and one more thing. I love this. And then just not caring for yourself, like the sweats and the beat up t-shirt and the not brushing your teeth, and like, all right, this is the sacrifice I have to make to get there. But then you stop and go, wait, does Beyonce do this? Do other successful people do it? What got you here won't get you there. But we do make the mistake that when we want more revenue or we want more clients or impact, whatever it is, we do often make this mistake of, well, I just have to keep doing more of what I'm already doing. And that is sometimes a fatal error, because what got you to 100K in revenue doesn't get you to $1 million in revenue. So talk to us about, so we talked about a little bit about the mindset shifts. Is it just, you know, when you went from the 138 to the 700, did you go, okay, here are all the things that I'm doing. Here's all the strategies. My strategy was do everything and work super, super hard. Did you just go, okay, let's apply the 80-20 rule? What's the 20% that's really getting me my revenue? And then optimize that. Like, what's the actual tactics to going from 138 to 700?
Sure. So there's fundamentally on the tactical outer game, not the inner game, because the inner game is 80% of it, April.
Sure,
okay.
for sure.
Like, this is like change your identity, change your beliefs, right? Like, you need that because otherwise you won't execute on the tactical things. But if you just want the tactical outer game, there's only 3 ways to make more money in business. I don't care who you are. There's only 3 ways. You raise your prices, you sell more widgets, so quantity, or you add a new channel of income. Everything goes into those 3 channels, 3 categories, I should say. And I like to reduce it to the simplicity of that, so that because what happens for people is they start going into a business plan that has 50,000 moving parts to it. And then they have to do 1,001 different things. And then what happens? They stop. They go into confusion, overwhelm, overdrive,
For sure.
and they don't execute. So let's break it down to the ridiculous, the simplistic bits. So I did fundamentally 2 out of 3 of those. Okay. That first year. 1, I raised my prices. Okay. And this is where that identity, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, and limiting beliefs like, oh, people won't do business with me because I'm so expensive. And am I the kind of person that charges X amount?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to learn how to change who you're being and hold that and not, I'm not going to say that I didn't waver, because I had all the same nervousness that everyone else did, but most people turn around. And I wanted it badly enough, so I didn't turn around. I experienced the discomfort and I stuck with it. Okay. Most people are like, this sucks. This does not feel good, and go backwards. Okay?
Why did you want it bad enough? What was the driving? How were you getting leverage?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Okay. I want to get back to the 3 things.
Okay.
I will answer this first. Remind me to come back though.
All right. I got a circle on my notes. Okay, we're coming back to it, Amira.
So fundamentally there's, so you can't make anyone want it badly enough. Okay. There is something core in you that wants it badly enough. But the challenge is, do you want it more than your fears? Okay. And I wanted it more than my fears. Now, I got leverage in one way that I knew in the moment, not before I made the decision, but in the moment. Okay. As I was going through it. And one that I can see with 2020 hindsight. So that year I invested in mentorship. And I had always, I shouldn't say always, but there was, for the last 6 years prior to that, I always had some course I was doing or some mentorship, some coach that I was working with. I was not new to the coaching and mentorship game.
Sure. It's huge.
But it's huge. But that year I decided to work with a very high level mentor against my husband's desires. Okay.
Like, it works that way.
Okay. Like, I just need to be totally clear here. So
the people who love us most often won't understand this drive and this need 100%.
Yeah. So he was fine with me investing 20K to do a VIP day, but honey, I don't think 100K, which is what it was at the time.
Sure.
Like, let's just see how this plays out. Like, just take your time with this. You know, he also was like, is this guy selling snake oil? Right.
Yeah.
Like the whole 9 yards.
And let's just put this relative to your income. You're not running $100 million organization and going to go drop 100K. You're running a much smaller business. Like we got to put that into terms of like, here's how much money I was making. And I'm sure those numbers you were giving were revenue, probably not net profit. Here's the amount of revenue, and my profit was much less than this. Faced with 100K investment, like we just got to put that to scale.
Correct. So there's two things here. To answer the leverage question, up until that point, all financial decisions, whether they were in my business or part of family, were, hey, honey, what do you think about this financial decision?
Sure.
Even if it was my money, it was an us decision.
Sure.
I was asking for permission.
Mm-hmm.
I went against what my husband thought was good and right. And there's a whole conversation about that. Like we could, if you want to go there, I'm happy to go there. But there was like, I was crying as I signed on the dotted line. Like I was having an out of body experience as I was signing up for this, but I also knew that it was absolutely the right thing to do. And when I came back and I shared that I had done this, because I did not keep it a secret, he pretty much didn't talk to me for 3 weeks, and I was in deep shame over this.
Wow.
And two things. I had decided to triple my prices. Okay, so back to where I went in the 3 ways to make more money.
So this 100K investment was the catalyst for you tripling your prices?
Yeah. So I went and I did a VIP day. I built a strategy, made the decision to triple my prices. And then at the end of that VIP day, signed up for the mentorship. So depending on where you want to throw the decision, there you go.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I come home the first day that I'm back, I almost sell. The person said yes to my tripled prices. I didn't know what I was doing with sales. Now I teach sales, but at the time I didn't know what I was doing with sales, and I didn't ask for a deposit, and I didn't like close the deal basically. And she backed out. So
gotcha.
But I had enough of an inspiration of like, this can happen.
You set a new standard. You set a new standard. Yeah.
That, and someone did say yes. I didn't close it, but someone did say yes. So I was off to the races. But then my then husband was not happy with this. And I went into deep shame for about 3 weeks and didn't, get out from underneath the covers. That's an exaggeration, but like, it was challenging. But then I was like, okay, I've done this. I've signed on the dotted line. I keep my word. I pay my bills. I am going to make bank. Like I am going to, if other people have done this, I can do this. If there's one, I can be the next one. And I did everything my mentor told me as quickly as I could humanly get myself to, meaning like how to not to be in resistance, not to say I'll do that in 2 weeks, not to say that I'll do that later, because I knew I would talk myself out of things. And I started selling at a much higher level. And my husband then was very, very happy and thought it was the best thing since sliced bread.
Did he also think it was his idea too?
No, he did not.
Okay, good. So he never. Well, and I do want to touch on this, Amira. I'm so glad that you brought this up, and thank you for your honesty and vulnerability in sharing this story. And here's, by
the way, part of this was I'm not going to lose the money that I invested, but I'm not going to get divorced over this. Okay. So those were to full circle on that.
Sure.
Those were the 2 ways that I got leverage. Like I experiencing that was more of a negative than moving through the terror of learning how to do sales, or the terror of being more visible and doing marketing at a higher level, or right. Cause these are things that like, it seems intellectually totally fine to go and do it, but emotionally you're like, yeah, some other day.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that you talked about this, because one thing that I've seen both from pivoters and then even clients, a lot of clients go to a lot of personal development events, and I'm a huge fan of them too. I highly encourage them, whether it's mine or anybody else's, just something where you're focused on you and your business and getting better and delivering at a higher level. Here's the flip side to that. People assume that when they see people going there, that their partners support them attending. Let me tell you, that is the rarity. And I'm going to be real honest about that, because if you're someone who is interested in things like that, but you're like, I don't know, I feel like it would cause some tension, or I don't know that I can get my partner on board. It's a big investment. It will, because those people, they may love you, but they're also invested in the current version of you. And it's this combination of fear. Sometimes it's legitimate concern, but it's also fear of the financial investment. And then there's also a little bit of fear of, will this new version of them still be in love with the old version of me.
Yeah.
And that happens so often that I really want to touch on this, because if you're going through it yourself, I run masterminds every Wednesday, and some people are simply in the mastermind because nobody else in their family or their partner understands their desire for more, and they
Correct.
need to have someone in their life that gets it.
Totally. So here's the thing. When you grow, it causes other people to have to react to your growth.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to go, wow, look at her. She's growing. I want that too.
Sure.
How did you do that? Let me go. I would like that. And some people are going to go, you're making me uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because you're growing. And this can be your partner, your parents, your sister,
Siblings.
right?
Yep.
Like even your best friend. Okay. And so masterminds are super, super important. And here's the thing. You've heard me mention my husband like 2 or 3 times in this conversation. And we had a great relationship in so many ways. And ultimately, he was very supportive of the growth and started to learn some of the things that I was learning, and
Mm-hmm.
was reading the same books and asking questions and all of that. And ultimately, we got to a place where we wanted different things. But it wasn't. And here's where people stop themselves. My company's called The Unstoppable Woman. So like, here's one way that people stop themselves. They project into the future saying, if I make this decision in favor of what I want right now, then I'm going to grow so big that it's going to alienate my husband and I don't want to be alone, or some other version of the marriage is going to,
Sure.
break apart. I'm here to say that our marriage did not break apart because of the financial success. Okay. He loved that. Let me just tell you. Okay. Like he loved that. Okay. And fundamentally, we had a conversation about 3 or 4 years into this process for me. And I was like, this is where I want our lives to go. And this is where I want to go. And this is what I'm into. Do you want that? And he was like, no, that's not the life I want.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I want this. And I was like, that's not the life I want.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what no one talks about. Okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't say no one. There's probably someone else out there talking about this, but our sex life sucked. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it had sucked for many years. And I thought something was wrong with me. And I was like, I'm tired of holding you hostage. Go have an amazing relationship with someone else. And like, I need to set you free.
Yeah.
Okay. And we had a very amicable divorce, but that me being able to get to a place where I could make that conscious choice, that took a lot of growth.
I bet.
Okay. Because I would not have been able to do that when I started this journey. I would have been like, my security is in being loved by this person. Right. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not advocating divorce, but the after story is like great sex life, making more money, everyone's happy, we both have better lives, all of that. And again, I'm not being flip about this,
Sure.
but I am saying that some of those fears, you can either create them as a truth, or you can create the outcome that works best for everyone involved. And it can be a really positive, growth can be a really positive thing.
Do you think that if you hadn't gone down this road of personal development and financial success, different outcome?
Totally. I would still be in that marriage. He would
Sure.
not be having great sex. I would not be having great sex. We were great friends. We did life. We created
Sure.
life well together, but that part of our relationship wasn't great. And I probably would have still been, on Amazon trying to figure out like which $19 thing was the better deal. Right. Like,
Wow. That's
okay.
powerful.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
powerful.
that was the life I was living. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but like, I was committed to that. That's what I knew. That's what felt safe. It's really important to realize that that's what feels safe, because it's known, you've experienced it, and you've survived it. So it's like, oh yeah, that's my truth. That's,
Wow.
I know that. Yeah.
It's interesting because it comes back to what I heard was going through this process creates a lot of awareness, creates a lot of empowerment, and ultimately it gives you options. where in the other version of your life that existed, that could have been your destiny, if you will, you didn't have as many options. And so you're backed in a corner, and then you're backing him in a corner too. Ultimately, none of y'all are happy, but this path that you went down really set you both free.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
I still love him, right? Like this is not about making him wrong.
Sure.
We had a great relationship, and that's not a very culturally accepted perspective. You're either supposed to hate your ex or not get divorced, or
Yeah.
any number of things. But I really have a strong stance for freedom, and you can create freedom within a relationship. I've helped so many women scale their business and scale their relationship so that it's become better. Okay.
Sure.
So I want the listeners to know that this is not an advocation for divorce. I don't believe
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
What I hear is you're advocating for just a better life, and
Correct.
whatever that looks like. Like, it's not this life that's being held hostage by real or perceived limitations.
Correct. 100%.
It's amazing. Okay, so this is amazing. Thank you so much for speaking honestly and candidly to that. Let's get back to the 3 ways that we make more money, because there is this world where you went from 138 to 700, and we were just about to understand. So
Yeah.
you made this huge investment, huge investment. So let's not diminish that. The amount of courage it takes, dropping 20K on development, or whether it's your business or personal, is huge. That's a huge commitment. But you took this a whole nother level of, now I'm gonna 5 times that. I'm going to drop 100K. That's scary. That takes a lot of courage. Then talk to us about whether it was these 3 factors at place, like what changed then?
Yeah. So in hindsight, I knew I can see that there's only 3 ways to make money. No one laid that out for me. I had to
Sure.
figure that out. But like there's raising your prices. I did that. Okay. There's selling more of what you're already selling. So
Okay.
no other change except you're selling more. That's quantity. There's a limit to that, especially if you're in a service. Let me say this differently. There's a limit to that if you're in a service-based business that is connected to your time.
Sure.
Okay.
One-on-one kind of stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Products different. That's sort of sky's the limit. And then there's adding a new channel to your business. And that can either be within the core offerings of your business, right? That like I'm a business coach, right? So what I did was I added something called the Spirit of Wealth Mastermind and Masterclass. And that was a new offering, but it was within the framework of my business. Other people, like I've helped lawyers start coaching businesses, and now they have 2 multi-million-dollar businesses, right? It's adjacent, it's a new channel, but it's standalone business as well. Okay. So, and oftentimes you do more than one, and there's some version of those 3 things. And I map that out in something called the scale plan, because you need to look at your numbers and figure out which strategy works for you. So, but don't make it more complicated than it is. Like, do you need to raise your prices? Do you need to sell more? Do you need to add a new channel to your business, or some combination therein? And then once you have that identified, then you can go into cause and effect and figure out what are the new causes that I need to put into play to get this result.
It's so simple when we boil it down to just that. Look at your business and go, which of these 3? And to your point, it might be a combination of all of these. We don't raise our prices because we think the market can't tolerate it, or we have our identity like, well, I'm not the kind of person that makes this much or charges this much. There's limiting beliefs around, well, there won't be clients that can afford that. So we have to do the work. Like Amira was saying at the beginning, we have to do the work on those pieces. And we've talked about that a lot on PivotMe, is doing the mindset work so that we can move these, like turn these dials. But if we just look at our business and go, which of these 3 do we need to adjust? Which of these is going to be the biggest needle movers in our business? And then go do that thing. It really kind of takes what seems like this big nebulous thing and goes, no. It's just one of 3 things. Which of these 3 things, which of these 3 dials are you going to adjust? And then measure, we manage what we measure. So measure them and see what's getting you the most results.
Correct. 100%. Don't make it more complicated.
For sure.
Business is easy.
Yeah.
That was one of the most challenging things for me to understand, because I was raised with the perspective, the belief, the paradigm that says making money is hard and business is complicated and you're going to be lost and there isn't order to the universe. It's all chaotic and you're just a victim of circumstance, right? Like some version of all of those things. And the truth is we live in an ordered universe. There's a methodology for making more money in business. Get out of your own way, right? Like it's time to step it up and don't make it more complicated than it is. Now, that being said, the process, the actual like in the trenches doing the work, there were a lot of dark nights of the soul, April.
For sure.
I'm not gonna, I had to go through those terror barriers, go through those challenges. And it's only afterwards with 2020 hindsight that I can see that, oh, this is easy. Right. And now I understand the methodology. And now I understand that it really, truly is easy. It's just about
for sure
doing it. Yeah.
I have a good friend who just opened up his own, he's a vet and he opened up his own vet practice. And we were having a long talk on Saturday night. And I explained to him the dark night of the entrepreneur soul. And he's like, oh, that's a thing. I said, oh, it's a thing. And you will have many of those. Totally. And so it's the thing you don't know about until you become a business owner. And he's like, I woke up at 6 a.m. to read reports on a Saturday and everybody else was asleep. And I'm like, yes, that definitely happens. So there are those dark nights and those early mornings for sure. But there is a framework that you can follow. We bake a bunch of emotion into it and that's when it gets muddy, but it really can be an equation. Frameworks take the guesswork out of it. Talk to us about some of your success practices. So how you make sure that you're getting that predictable success. So even personal, like I have a morning routine. I make sure I set up, I do a quarterly review. Talk to us about what you're doing to guarantee that success.
Oh, I have lots of different ones. So let's dig in.
Let's
Tell
get
me when
in.
to stop. Okay. So fundamentally I have a morning routine. It's evolved over time. The base concept of that, there's two basic things and it finds different form over time, but is study. Like, what am I putting into my head? How am I growing myself? So in the early years, it was a lot of like learning, studying, immersing in a different way of thinking to change my own thinking. And so we have something called the Morning Mindset Club. That's a free program that you can grab. And that's about really teaching you how to think and differently about success. So I really do believe in starting your morning, putting good stuff in your head.
Sure.
Then I do something that I developed called the Creation Playbook, which is something that we teach in depth with our Spirit of Wealth Mastermind. And this is this concept of how do you create what you want and getting really super clear on your goals, from a meta level, 30, 60, 90-day goals, what the beliefs are that are associated with achieving those, and what are the habits that go with those, and really reviewing that every single day without fail, being super accountable, super committed to that, and doing it preferably first thing in the morning, so that your brain, your mind, this incredibly powerful aspect of you, can go about finding solutions to achieving what you want to achieve. And when you do this, you close the gap on time. It's an incredible process. So I do that as well every morning. And then I beat the sun, I have to say. There are people out there who are night owls, but I'm up at 4:30, 5:30 every morning. And that means, totally. That means I have solid time to myself to do the deeper thinking, to do the planning, the visioning, before the emails start coming, before the meetings start coming, before I'm in outward engagement mode. I have already done more work in my business than 99% of the people out there. So that's a success strategy. And in terms of how I set my business up, I always have goals, and I'm very clear about what does it take to meet those goals. I have goals for my personal life as well. It's holistic. I attach attach is an interesting way of saying it. I link my goals with my bigger vision and purpose. And If you had asked me 6 years ago what your purpose was, I would not have been able to tell you. I would have been like, shut up about purpose. I just want to not be poor anymore. Right.
Yeah. Not be poor. That's my purpose.
That's right. And now I have a much bigger purpose and fundamentally it has to do with like letting people know you can have a lit up life. Like you can have like, I think we are brought up in kind of a schizophrenic way. Like you can have it all, but you can't really have it all. Right.
Sure.
And I really stand for, having the great relationship, having the great sex, being in great shape. I let go of 25 pounds. I feel so much better about myself. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm running a business. I'm running a 7-figure business. Right. Like it's like, stop the limited thinking, start being unstoppable and holding yourself. It didn't happen overnight, but you can do this over time and achieve more than you really think possible. So
that's amazing. I love this concept because we are kind of pushed into this binary thinking. It's either or. Well, you can either have a 0 or a 1. You can have the thriving business, but you're going to sacrifice your health and your relationships and all these sorts of things. And you're an example of doing them all, doing them being very intentional. That's how you get to have it all, is being intentional. But let me ask you this, Amira, how do you self-sabotage?
Oh, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I love it. So let me think about how I self-sabotage for a moment. I think historically it's been by getting exhausted, getting tired. I have some very clear trauma experiences, trauma with a lowercase t, not a capital T, from childhood. And my reaction, the way I saved myself, was by getting tired and curling up in a little ball. So you actually heard me say that, like when I went into this high level mentorship and my husband was like, what the friggity frick are you doing? Like I curled up in a little ball and went under the covers. Like that was my strategy for safety. And so that comes out in exhaustion and being tired. And I always know when I'm up against an edge where I'm really growing, I'll be like, because normally I'm this, right? I'm like kind of talking a little fast and go.
Sure.
I will hit a psychological exhaustion, not even, I mean, it feels physical after a while, but it's psychological exhaustion. And that's a place where it takes discernment for me to realize, do I need to back off and give myself a little bit more space, time, flow, sleep? Or is this just sabotage? Like this is the way my subconscious mind understands it knows to stop me. And I've gotten really good at discerning the difference. And but that is, I think, my biggest sabotage. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for letting it. It's such a good reminder. A lot of times people think you get to a level of success and then sabotage goes away. It doesn't. It's still there. Sometimes we just get better at managing it and recognizing it. Reach for better coping mechanisms instead of the usually kind of default coping mechanisms. But when we can talk about it and people go, oh, I sabotage the same way, or, oh, this is how she moves past her sabotage. It's a good reminder for us all, like new level, new devil. Like we get to that new level and then we're like, oh, sabotage still came along, or imposter syndrome or whatever it is still came along, but knowing how to manage that when it creeps up is a huge part of navigating success.
Here's an interesting example of that. So this is a way, like the after version is not that you don't start sabotaging, but it's how you handle it and how you recognize it. So there've been a lot of initiatives that, as CEO of my company, I have been driving, right? Like I am 100% responsible for putting them all into play, and we're doing a lot of great things, but there's just a lot right now.
Sure.
Okay. And I recognized after a period of time that I was having not just a work day that was, 12 hours or whatever, but I was having like meetings for 8 to 9 hours a day. And this was like, okay, this is unsustainable. This is not, again, that's that concept of like, I am going to burn myself out and become exhausted if we keep this up. And I saw that maybe a little too late, but not, not 7 months later, but like,
Sure.
I was like starting to feel that exhaustion, right? Starting to feel that burnout. And I was like, oh, line in the sand, we don't do this. Right. So now I know that is a sign of self-sabotage. We don't do that anymore. How do I need to change this? Put new boundaries in, let my entire team know, do not book before this time, after this time, only a certain number of meetings in that time. And these are the boundaries. This is done. Did things have to shift? Absolutely. But we shifted it, and we're better off for it, not having stayed in that. But that's an example of how you can recognize the sabotage, but not let it be a sabotage if you learn how to be aware of it and not make yourself wrong for experiencing it.
I hope you got some amazing information from our interview today, and I've set up the next video for you. So I'll see you over there at the next video.